The silence in my apartment wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was the silence of a man who knows he is already dead. Mr. Vance made a fatal calculation. He thought $500 would buy my silence. He thought fear was a leash. He was wrong. Fear, when pushed too far, turns into fuel. I didn't spend his money on rent. I didn't buy my sister's medicine. Not yet. I went to a hardware store 3 towns over. I bought industrial-grade Thermite, a portable welding torch, and a crowbar heavy enough to crack a skull. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. Not from the cold, but from the realization of what I was about to become. The practical, scared electrician was gone. Tonight, I wasn't going back to guard the facility. I was going back to burn it to the ground. Tonight, I am the hunter. The rain had stopped, leaving the world slick and black. I abandoned my car in the mud near the riverbank, a mile from the Omega facility. I knew the keycard wouldn't be enough to get me into the lower levels. I needed a blind spot. I found it. The drainage outflow. It was a rusted, gaping maw jutting out of the concrete embankment, spewing a trickle of neon-colored sludge into the river. It smelled of sulfur and chemical rot. It was a coffin made of pipe, but it was my only way in. I crawled. For 500 yards, I dragged my body through the slime. The air was suffocating, thick with fumes that burned my eyes. Rats, or things that looked like rats but were too big, too hairless, scurried over my boots. My bad knees screamed in protest against the cold concrete, a sharp, grinding pain with every inch I moved. Turn back, my brain screamed. Go home. Live. But then, I felt it. A warmth. Not physical heat, but a vibration in the base of my skull. It started as a hum and grew into a whisper. Elias. It wasn't a plea anymore. It was a beacon. She knew I was coming. I reached a grate marked Sector 4, Sublevel, Biohazard. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I pulled the thermite paste from my bag, molding it around the rusted hinges. I lit the magnesium strip and turned away. Hiss. The flash was blinding white, burning through the steel like it was butter. Molten metal dripped onto the floor, sizzling. I kicked the grate in. It fell with a heavy clang that echoed too loudly. I was inside. But this wasn't the hallway I knew. I was deeper. This was the digestive tract of the facility. Pipes hissed with steam, and the walls were lined with glass cabinets. I shone my flashlight, and my stomach dropped. They weren't just cabinets. They were display cases. Inside were jars of formaldehydes. Floating in the yellow liquid were pieces. A hand with 6 fingers. An eye that looked like a nebula. Patches of skin that glowed faintly. I realized then that Omega wasn't just holding her. They were harvesting her. Vance wasn't a businessman. He was a butcher selling parts of an angel. My fear evaporated. All that was left was a cold, hard rage. I gripped the crowbar until my knuckles turned white. "I'm coming," I whispered. I climbed the service ladder, emerging behind a maintenance panel in the main corridor of Sector 4. The lights were still flickering, buzzing like angry hornets. The temperature had dropped to freezing, My breath plumed in the air. But the atmosphere had changed. It wasn't silent anymore. Thud, clank, thud, clank. Footsteps. Heavy, metallic, rhythmic. I peeked through the mesh of the panel. The Warden. The monster in the hazmat suit was pacing in front of the blast door. He was agitated. He swung his electric baton against the walls, sending showers of blue sparks onto the floor. Up close, he was terrifying. 7 feet of armor and muscle. I could hear his breathing through the mask, a wet, mechanical rasping. I checked my watch. 2 a.m. I couldn't fight him. If I stepped out, he would break me in half. I needed to be smarter. I needed a distraction. I looked at the wiring above my head, the fire suppression system. It was an old model, copper wiring exposed. A simple trick for an electrician. I stripped 2 wires and crossed them. Spark. Blam. The emergency sprinklers in the far corridor exploded, spraying high-pressure chemical foam everywhere. The alarm screamed, a deafening wail. The Warden roared, a sound that was half human, half machine, and stomped away toward the noise, his baton crackling with lethal voltage. The path was clear. I kicked the panel open and sprinted. My boots slammed on the metal grating. I reached the blast door. My hands were shaking so hard, I dropped the keycard once. Come on, Elias. Move. I swiped it. Green light. The door hissed open. The laboratory was a freezer. Ice had formed on the instruments, jagged and sharp. In the center, the tank glowed with an intense, blinding blue light. The liquid inside was churning violently. She was awake. She wasn't floating peacefully this time. She was thrashing, pounding her fists against the glass. Her hair floated around her like a halo of ink. Her eyes, those galaxy eyes, locked onto mine the moment I entered. The panic on her face vanished, replaced by a look of pure, shattering relief. You came back. Her voice echoed in my skull, louder this time, clearer. I could feel her emotion. It tasted like tears. I told you I would, I said out loud, my voice cracking. I didn't waste time with the control panel. I went straight to the tank's base. I fired up the welding torch. The blue flame roared. I attacked the locking clamps. The metal groaned under the heat, glowing cherry red. Sparks showered over me, burning holes in my jacket, searing my skin. But I didn't pull back. Stand back, I yelled, though I didn't know if she understood words. I grabbed the heavy pry bar. I swung with everything I had left. Crack. A spiderweb fracture appeared. Crack. The glass groaned. One more. For my sister. For the jars in the basement. For her. Smash. Thousands of gallons of freezing blue liquid crashed onto the floor. The force swept me off my feet, slamming me into the metal railing. I gasped, coughing, soaked in the chemical fluid that smelled of ozone and ancient rain. Amidst the shards of glass and chemical fog, she fell. I scrambled forward on hands and knees, ignoring the glass cutting my palms. I caught her before she hit the metal grating. She was surprisingly light, but her skin was hot to the touch, vibrating with energy. Up close, she was breathtaking. The cracks in her porcelain skin pulsed with light. She looked up at me, water dripping from her lashes. She reached out a hand with long, elegant fingers, and touched my face. The moment her skin touched mine, the world stopped. It wasn't just a touch, it was a collision. A flood of images rushed into my mind, not like a movie, but like memories that were suddenly mine. I saw a purple sky with twin moons. I felt the wind of a world I'd never visited. I felt her loneliness, centuries of it. And beneath it all, I felt her gratitude. "My name," she whispered, her actual voice rasping from disuse, sounding like wind chimes, "is Lyra." "Lyra," I repeated. It felt like a prayer. "We must go," she said, trying to stand, her legs trembling. "He is coming." The voice cut through the air like a knife. I spun around, shielding Lyra with my body. Standing on the catwalk above us was Mr. Vance. He was immaculate in his suit, seemingly untouched by the chaos. But he wasn't alone. 6 armed guards trained their rifles on us, red laser sights dancing on my chest. And behind them, blocking the only exit, stood the Warden. He had returned, and he looked angry. Vance adjusted his tie, looking down at us with a sneer of disappointment. "I thought you were a practical man, Elias. I thought you cared about your sister. Instead, you choose this? My sister wouldn't want me to be a monster like you," I spat back. Vance laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Monster? You think I'm the monster? Look at her, Elias. She isn't a woman. She is a battery. Her DNA contains the coordinates to a world made of pure energy. We are trying to save humanity from an energy crisis, and you are trying to play Romeo in a B-movie. She's a living being," I shouted, tightening my grip on Lyra. "She is property," Vance screamed, his composure finally cracking. "And you have damaged my merchandise. Warden, kill him. Secure the asset." The Warden charged. The ground shook with every step. He raised the electric baton, ready to crush my skull. I didn't have a weapon. I held up the crowbar, a useless gesture against a tank in human form. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the end. But the blow never came. A hum, loud and piercing, filled the room. The pressure in the air dropped so sharply my ears popped. I opened my eyes. Lyra was standing. She wasn't trembling anymore. Her eyes were glowing so bright they were like 2 miniature suns, illuminating the dark lab. She raised one hand toward the Warden. The monster stopped mid-stride, frozen in the air, suspended by an invisible grip. Lyra tilted her head, her face devoid of mercy. She clenched her fist. Crunch. The Warden's hazmat suit began to crumple inward. Metal screeched against bone. The baton exploded. With a flick of her wrist, Lyra launched the 7-foot monster across the room. He smashed into the reinforced concrete wall with the force of a freight train, burying him under a pile of rubble. Silence followed. "Fire!" Vance screamed. "Kill them both!" The guards opened fire. The sound was deafening. Bullets rained down on us. But Lyra didn't flinch. She created a barrier of blue energy, a shimmering dome around us. The bullets stopped in midair, suspended in the force field, spinning uselessly before dropping to the floor like hail. But I saw the toll it took. Blood, blue, glowing blood, began to trickle from Lyra's nose. She stumbled, her light flickering. She was weak from the stasis. She couldn't keep this up. "Sector 0, she gasped, leaning heavily on me. "The gate. Take me there. Now." We ran. We ran through the bowels of the facility, past flashing red lights and screaming sirens. My knees were on fire. agony shooting up my legs with every step. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I was practically carrying her now. "Almost there," I grunted. "Stay with me, Lyra." Sector 0 was the heart of the factory. It was a massive circular chamber, housing a machine that defied logic. A giant metal ring, 3 stories high, inscribed with symbols that matched the marks on Lyra's skin. "They built the facility around it," Lyra explained breathlessly. "They found the gate, but they couldn't open it. Only I can." We reached the central platform. The blast doors behind us began to close, but Vance's voice boomed over the intercom. "Seal the room! Vent the oxygen! Do not let them escape!" A hiss filled the chamber. The air was being sucked out. My lungs burned. My vision started to blur at the edges. I fell to my knees, gasping. Lyra placed her hands on the control pedestal. The machine roared to life. The ring began to spin, faster and faster, generating a vortex of purple energy. Gravity seemed to shift. Debris started floating off the floor. A wind whipped through the chamber, pulling at our clothes. "Elias!" Lyra shouted over the roar of the machine. She held out her hand to me. Behind her, through the swirling portal, I saw it. The purple sky, the twin moons, a landscape of crystal spires. A world that wasn't gray, a world that wasn't dying. "If you go," Vance's voice crackled, desperate now, pleading. "You can never come back. You'll die in that atmosphere. Elias, think about the money, think about the debt. I'll double it, $10,000. I looked back at the sealed blast doors. I looked at the surveillance camera watching us, its red eye blinking. I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed the thick envelope Vance had given me yesterday. $500. The price of a soul. I pulled out the cash. I let the vacuum of the room take it. The bills flew into the air, scattering like confetti into the abyss. "Keep the change," I muttered. I took Lyra's hand, and together, we jumped into the light. The transition felt like dying. It was cold, then boiling hot, then weightless. My body felt like it was being pulled apart, atom by atom. Darkness took me. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in a factory. I was lying on soft, violet grass that hummed when I touched it. The air smelled sweet, like jasmine and ozone. I sat up, checking my body. My knees, they didn't hurt. The chronic pain in my back was gone. The air here was rich, thicker than Earth's, energizing my blood with every breath. I stood up. Above me, the sky was a tapestry of nebulas and stars, visible even in the daylight. 2 moons, one pale white and one deep crimson, hung in the horizon. "Elias?" I turned. Lyra was standing by a stream of crystal clear water. She wasn't wearing rags anymore. She was dressed in woven silk that shimmered like pearl. Her skin was fully healed, glowing with a soft, healthy luminescence. She looked like a queen. She looked like home. But she wasn't alone. I walked over to her, my heart swelling in my chest. In her arms, she held a bundle of cloth. A child. I looked down at him. He had my nose, my stubborn chin. He had human skin, soft and warm. But when he opened his eyes, one was brown, earthy, and dull like mine, and the other was a swirling galaxy of blue and purple stars. A hybrid, a bridge between 2 worlds, a miracle born from 2 broken souls. "He needs a name," Lyra said softly, leaning her head on my shoulder. I looked out over the valley at the crystal cities glowing in the distance. I thought about the man I used to be, the practical man, the scared man. That man died in the warehouse. Miller, I said, remembering the watchman who warned me. Let's call him Miller. Back on Earth, I'm listed as a missing person, probably dead. My sister eventually got the insurance money. Vance made sure of that to cover his tracks. Let them. Let them think Elias the electrician died in a tragic accident. They aren't wrong. I wrap my arm around my wife and look down at my son under the light of twin moons. I have finally found something money could never buy. I didn't just find a way out. I found a life.